All right, here we go. I just started the recording for everybody who is not here, and for those who are here, welcome. Good morning, or afternoon, or as with Bertrand, good evening. And thanks everyone for showing up, and big thanks for not just today, but all of this series that Frank and Brad have been putting together. It's been pretty extraordinary to have these personal connections with these with growers in Champagne, which I know that both Frank and Brad are passionate about, and I see by our attendance over the course of these that quite a few others are quite passionate about, or weren't before and now are. I know many of us have spent a lot on Champagne since having these. I think I'm well over a case purchased just with the producers that we've featured on here. So it's costing me money, but a very enjoyable way to spend it. So quick thing on the rules. We're going to have everyone muted until the end. Most of you have been on these before, but use the chat function to write about the wines that you have, or just communicate and participate in the discussion during the presentation. It's a great way to keep things interactive. Frank will do some introductions and show some maps, and Brad will talk, as is obviously our guest of honor. Bertrand will have his presentation and discussions about the wines and etc. Well, this Brad and Frank can walk you through. At the end, we'll do questions and answers, and we're going to use the raise hand function. Once we announce that it's time for question and answers, you have a little raise hand, and we can call on you, and you can ask Bertrand your question yourself, and then we can unmute you and mute you back up. Lastly, for your view, we have two options: speaker view, which is how I'm recording this, because it features just the person who's speaking, and gallery view. So with a group of this size, if you prefer to see everybody, choose gallery view, and you can see everyone in a grid all together. And so with that, I turn it over to Frankie.
Thank you, Todd. I've been really looking forward to this morning and being able to meet Bertrand again, as I haven't seen him since May 2018 when I visited. And I visited on a Friday, which was the final appointment of a week where I had done 9 visits, starting on Monday of that week and ending on Friday. So I got to Bertrand's place around lunchtime. I showed up early and he was not ready, so I said, I'll come back in a little bit. So I went back down the small road towards the motorway to a hotel, and I got a baguette and some cheese, and then came back down the road again, and then showed up, and then off we went. So I remember that visit really well, and I learned a lot that day. I left there inspired and thinking more about what does this process of biodynamics mean to me, and based on how I spend my wine budget and my money, who do I want to support, and what choices do I want to make? And I remember one thing during that visit, Bertrand, we went down into your winery area, and you had that big wall, and there was all kinds of drawings upon it with chalk, and we talked about the evolution of agriculture, and then the industrial revolution, and chemical farming, and then some other things. So we'll save some of that for a moment, but this was a really important visit for me. At the end of the visit that day, this was on Friday afternoon, we were going to be leaving Champagne the following morning. So Bertrand goes into his riddle rack and pulls out a Shiner of 2006, not labeled, dusty, and goes out to the driveway and savors it, and brought out 2 glasses. And on this tall, upright, small metal table, we sat there and we enjoyed a glass of 2006 vintage. And I took some pictures with Helene and the dog and Bertrand, and then I drove away. So here we are again 2 years later, and we're on again. So thank you all for joining this morning. And I also want to welcome Brad Baker to the call, as he brings his knowledge and deep relationships in the region to the discussion as well. I'll be moderating today, but we'll definitely be relying on Brad to help me color the discussion. So before going any further, I want to show you a map, because as we've talked about together as a group over the past 8 weeks, I want to show you where we've been and give you a sense of that. So you probably all can see my screen now. This is the map where we have Champagne displayed. At the top, we have, let me go up there so you can see Margane, where we were last week, Villemar previously, Musée, Benoit Deu. This is all in the north. But you'll remember as we head south, we had Dominique Laurent on and we did Marie Courtin. As we think about now where Bertrand's vineyards are located in his Ludite, we get down into the south, and Chablis is not far from here. So let me show you Chablis as a reminder how close we are to Chablis. Why I say that is important because as we'll talk about during this session, the presence of Portlandian and Kimmeridgian soils are not dissimilar to Chablis, and so that's why the wines and the influence of Chablis is so prominent here in the south. Marie Courtin here in Palaiseau, and then up here just to the right, which is going to be east and north, is Bouxières-sur-Arche, and that is the village where Vouette Sorbee is located. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit more and show you a few other things, and then I'm going to introduce Bertrand. So here's the village, and you can see the wineries here. I'm going to zoom in a bit more. There's a windmill up here at the top of the slope. This is actually a slope, and this is a plateau. There's a windmill here, and if you saw some of my photos on Instagram or Wine Berserkers, you remember that windmill. That is the place here that I'm showing you. There's the windmill right there. So this is Vouette, and on the top of the plot up here, this is Sorbet. Over here is the plot Bion. There's two sides here. So that's also here. There's a little sliver here at the top, a Ludite called Termy, and Fonnet down here. So all of this Pinot Noir and Chardonnay and some Pinot Blanc is all right here in the village. And then there's a next village next door, which is Vouette-sur-Arche, which is here. And there's a little plot called Châtel that is up here, where there's also some grapes grown. So it's these 6 plots that form the 5 hectares, roughly, of the farming from Bertrand. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to introduce Bertrand Gautherot. Good morning, and nice to see you.
Good morning, every people.
Good morning to you. So where are you today?
I'm at my sister's house. It's her very young birthday. She's 60.
Ah, very good.
So there is a party behind me. I hope that somebody bring me champagne glasses.
It would be sad. It would be very sad if you were the only one not drinking champagne when it's right behind you, because I certainly am. So I have the Chardonnay open today. Forgive the label since my cellar decides it likes to just tear the hell out of them. This is the Blanc d'Argile, and this is the Chardonnay from Bion that I showed you on the map a moment ago. So Bertrand, it's a pleasure to meet you, and I've written down some important dates from doing my research about you. And the years of 1993, 1996, 1998, 2001, those are all important milestones for you, significant times. Can you talk about your history and let us understand that a little bit more?
It could be a long moment if I speak about my story, because many vintage make me growing up slowly. So one thing before, I'm so happy that you have Geoffroy Ducroux from New York with us, and he very well known my family and me, so he could help me if there is any problem for the question. Okay. So important moment, you speak about 93. 93, I'm coming back from industry. I was working as a plastic designer for lipstick to Guerlain, because vineyards of the family was so small that I've got to go away to earn my own And it was a very important moment because when I'm coming back to Champagne, in my idea, Champagne was a very high level quality wine. But when you make the job during all the years, you can see that it's a very industrial production. So it was complicated to accept that you have a lovely, lovely image around the world in Champagne. And when you work outside, you are in the middle of pesticides, chemical, and production in big cellar with inox tanks and a lot of enologic. So after one moment was very important is 96, 97, 98, when I meet Jérôme Prévost, Pierre Larmandier, Anselme Selos, and together we make many and many testing, blend testing with our wife, because the wife are very important to make decision, because professional decision gave a direction to the family life. So during this moment, we drink a lot of wine in many, many directions. And we fall in love with Hélène in biodynamic wine. It was easier for me because I never studied anything about winemaking or vineyards job. I learned only with my father and with my tasting. So it's the choice of what we taste in 96, 97, for example, in Léonard Humbrecht or Anne-Claude Leflèvre, who was at the beginning of Biodynamic, or people like that, Nicolas Joly, etc. It's make me go on the biodynamic way directly.
And that was the influence of Anselme Selos and Jérôme Prévost?
It's much on the possibility to make something else in Champagne. But they are not in biodynamic way, but they are in the idea of making Champagne with from your own village only, and not from technological wine. So what's important with Selos and Prévost is that we make a future in our decision to accept the result of the nature. It was very new in Champagne, because in Champagne the idea is to produce typical tasting for each houses. So the boss is not the vineyard, the boss is the winemaker, the enologue. Mm-hmm. You can make Krug, you can make Ruinart, etc. It's always the same taste. It's a different blend. Each vintage after vintage, they make a job in the cellar to obtain exactly what they want in the bottles. And it was very new point of view with Selos Prévost, is to accept our difference, and that it's not in the nature to make each year the same wine. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So it was important in the philosophy of the producer. Mm-hmm. After Selos and Prévost make what they want, but they are not in the biodynamic certification. So they try, but they don't go at the end of the reflection of the technique.
But when you were working with them, that's the time when you made the decision that you would go back to the village and go back to the stable and start making the wines there yourself. Is that right?
Oh, I absolutely want to coming back to the village because I was busy of the administration and all the decision by Louis Vuitton company. And there is many people who give their opinions when you're drawing a lipstick, but they don't know anything about the technique, about the possibility, etc. And people who decide are very far away of the produce. That's why I want to coming back to my village to have my own decision to make the job and choose the produce at the end. So I'm coming back, but I'm working to a cooperative only in the vineyards. And when I meet Ansem Selos and Jean Laurent with somebody very important, I decide to make my champagne. And the president of the cooperative showed me the door to go away because I was in biologic certification and biodynamic certification, and it makes too much trouble for all the producers.
The cooperative wasn't supportive of your decision to move to biodynamics, was it?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
They don't accept that there is another way for the future.
When we were talking about the plots, and I was doing some reading, the plot of Sorbee, which is up on the plateau, where you and I walked that day, and you showed me the soil in Sorbee that you farm, and then right across the dirt path, it must not be more than a couple meters. On the other side of the path is your cousin's plot. That is still farmed with chemical. When you took the soils from each plot of Sorbee, from his side and your side, and put them side by side, it was amazing to me that those soils were so different. And as I still remember the smell and the feel of your soil from that plot, some Sorbee. It was aromatic and fragrant. The thing that reminds me as I think about it, it just seemed alive. There was energy and life in that soil. And then your cousin's plot to me just seemed lifeless, dead. It was an amazing contrast, that one of the things I'll never forget from our visit that day. So the Sorbee plot has never seen any chemical at all?
Sorbee have chemical 25 years ago.
25 years ago. And what about Vouette?
The same moment. We stopped herbicides in 95 and it's finished after.
Okay. Okay. And so those plots were very different for me. Can you talk about in the family, in your cousin's farming, do you still have discussions about farming differences, or do you not discuss that anymore because now it's happened so many vintages?
I don't know if this type of discussion can interest many people, because you show a way with finish, it's a chemical way. So it's not very interesting. I think more interesting is go to the future. You make mistake, it can continue, earn enough money, but why speaking about bad decision? It's not important. Yes, it's important to see that the life can coming back. Mm-hmm. Because before my soils look like the soils of my cousin. But what's interesting in what you see, it's not the show about the bad chemical in viticulture and the fantastic biodynamic viticulture. It's not so important. What's very crazy for me is that the nature coming back very, very, very quickly with a lot of energy. And you tell yourself that it's incredible to smell the soils, to see the fresh and the color, because you concentrate a lot of carbon in the soils. So that's so incredible to see the life coming back. And to make a link for this moment that we are living now, what's happened now in the world, you see that the nature coming back very quickly in the town. We stop turn with our oh, there is something. Sorry. I'm not at home. It's complicated. Sorry.
Peaceful ring.
No, what I say, in our city, in our small village, we are only 130 people. And with the lockdown, there is many birds who are coming back. So life coming back very, very quickly. In your town, everywhere, you listen to the bird coming back and the insect, etc. It's very good for the future to know that life come back very quickly when you stop the chemical produce and all the moving of the car, on the trucks, on the trains, the airplanes, etc.
So the nature in the village that you've noticed, because people haven't been out farming and doing the industrial things that they do every day, you've noticed that nature and wildlife seems more present, more alive, more around you?
They don't change what they do in the vineyard, in the fields, but only the car will cross the village, only the airplane in the sky, all is changed. It's changing.
And what's it been like for you the past 3 months in the lockdown? How has it changed you?
Nothing. Because we finished pruning and the weather was so hot that the vineyards increased very quickly. And for example, yesterday, in the last 24 hours, vineyards is increase of 14 centimeters. So that's. And we are in the flowers. So during the lockdown, we are working a lot. And now we prepared the bottling. So something is changed because there is no visit, no meeting, no testing, etc. So I was in my job at 100%. Eloise was very happy during the lockdown.
So maybe we could talk about the film for a moment, because we got to meet her in the film, and I know she's off away celebrating. She has a birthday this week, is that right?
It was a 10/28.
Okay, all right. So we didn't get to meet her today, but in the film, what was it like for you to work with her as Ellie produced that wonderful piece of art? How was that for you?
I'm not sure about the question, because can you repeat?
Sure. What was it like working with your daughter on camera and having that film? What was that for you?
She was afraid to be in the film. It was for us, Ellie, the producer, coming to meet me 10 years ago, because he fall in love with bottles and he want to make a movie around that. He visiting 10 champagne biodynamic producer, and he have to find the money to make the film. And 8 years after, he coming back and say to me, I chose to make my film only with you. I've got the possibility to do that. Now we have to find an idea to make the link during the 50 minutes. So naturally, Eloise just arrived with us. So, so it was a good idea to make the link, to speak how Eloise can introduce in Vouette Sorbee. So the idea is to explain that the biodynamic wine is possible in Champagne, but we need something else in the film to tell a story, a lovely story, a romantic story, if you want.
Brad, maybe this is a good point to ask you into the discussion, because I know that you made a comment to me and to Todd, and I think you posted this in Wine Berserkers about the film to you represented family. So can you say more about that? And maybe Bertrand can react to that.
Yeah, I mean, to me, while obviously there is a wine and a champagne aspect, it's a family story. I mean, to me, it's about Bertrand's growth from his father, so taking from his past generations, and I think Bertrand also believes this, and basically being a vessel to give it to his daughter and future generations. I mean, it's an entire family story of, to me, a son and a father. How do you take from your past and give to your future? And how do you also give them freedom? You know, Bertrand had freedom from his father to make changes to follow his heart and soul. And it's about giving his daughter that same freedom, that if she wants to do something different, Bertrand will say, okay. And you can see Heloise, you know, in the film, question some things, talking to the Fleury family about how they came about biodynamics. And to me, that's what the story in the movie is about. It's passing from generation to generation. And I don't know, Bertrand, if you would agree.
Yeah, sure. You use a good word. I was so lucky that my father helped me in my first experience, and it's a good lesson for me. So I know that Heloise will be very different than me, and she spent 4 years at school in Burgundy. So that's why it will be a good possibility for the future, because with the new weather, with the hot temperature, the acidity of champagne go down vintage after vintage, and our climate seems like Burgundy 60 years before. So it's important that somebody give a new direction to the company. It's not a company, you know, it's only small houses. But and I'm very lucky because it's my daughter. I've got 2 sons who are older, and I think it's easier with a daughter than with a son. The 2 guys are much direct, and I think it's much difficult. Now it's okay. It's a good time.
But you want to get a glass of champagne?
Yes. Hélène arrived with glasses of champagne. The party can go on.
Please.
Regarde.
Hello. Hi.
Alors, so I've got to present to Hélène, my wife, someone who is very important, but he is one of our best friends who came to France for my birthday 50. It's Geoffroy Ducroux. Yes, here from New York. Hey, Geoffroy. And we speak to Hélène with Héloïse. We speak to Hélène a lot of one fantastic guy in Los Angeles. Hi, Morten.
Morten.
Hey, Morten. Yeah.
Bonjour, Morten.
Happy to see your face, Morten.
Very
Hélène.
happy to see you. Too bad we couldn't make the visit in April, but I hope to come soon. Okay.
But every people is welcome to Champagne. We take time for you.
Thank you. Thank you. So what are you drinking?
It's a Blanc d'Argile. Vintage 17.
Okay, good.
Not too bad.
Let me ask you a question. Since we have the Blanc d'Argile, we're discussing that. Did you graft over Vouette to Chardonnay? Is that right?
You have the good question, but it's not so simple because each vintage you have new idea. So I graphed my own Chardonnay, yes, in 2000, in 2001. In 2007, we tried to graft in the vineyards with the rootstock who have planted 3 years before. So we make T-bird graft. And since the two last plantation, we make a new graft. The name is F2. It's a Alsatian new graft, and it's a new technique to have a better graft with a long contact between the rootstock and the graft. It's very technique, but all is progress with what we learn. You have to know that a real winemaker all his life is a pupils at school, un étudiant à l'école, Monsieur Geoffroy.
A student.
We learn only one time each year.
That's right. You get one time per year to figure it out, and then after that, you got to wait another year. So, are you going to be making Chardonnay off of Vouette and bottling that separately, or will that continue to go into Argile?
We speak with Eloise. No, that's exactly the difficult of the link between father and daughter. She pruning all the vineyards herself since 2 years. Vouette.
All 5 hectares?
Half of 1 hectares.
Okay.
Or 5, yes.
Yeah.
But it's me who decides the type of graft because she was at school when I planted the vineyards. So she make experience now during the pruning, and she pruning in the respect of the moon calendar. So she's pruning in the day of roots, leaves, flowers, and fruits. The same experience that I have 20 years ago, but she have to make her own experience.
Mm-hmm.
And for the wine, we are not sure. She makes still wine. Sorry. She make 1 barrel of still wine last year, and the other part go in Blanc d'Argile.
Okay. Okay.
But we put away Chardonnay of Blanc d'Argile because I was buying a plot of Chardonnay to my brothers, who was in the blend of Blanc d'Argile before Clandestin was born. And now that there is a company Clandestin, I put away this plot to make the bottles Grandling in the Clandestin company, because the plot of Les Grandling was on Portlandien. So Blanc d'Argile was not pure Kimmeridgien before the vintage 15. After the vintage 15, a part go away.
Mm-hmm.
The Portlandien, Chardonnay Portlandien go away, go in the Grandling from Clandestin. And now the new production of Vouette with pure Kimmeridgien here going in Blanc d'Argile.
Starting in 2016, the Blanc d'Argile will be only Kimmeridgien?
Yes, but with a part of young vineyards. But we make on for vinification with Vouette to try.
Okay, so this 2014 I have open. This is Portlandian.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So let me ask one more question that I found interesting about the film, and then I'm going to let Brad make any comments that he might, and then we can think about question and answer. In the film, I remember that you were pruning. You and Eloise were pruning, and further on in the film when you had the heat wave. And what vintage was the heat wave?
I don't understand the word heat wave.
The burning of the grapes, what vintage was that?
Ah, it was last vintage, 19.
Yeah, 19. So when you were looking at the damage from the heat in the vineyard, and you were looking at how there were clusters on one part of the vine where sap had flowed. And on the other part of the vine, the clusters had died or croaked, as they said in the video, which I thought was very funny. The grapes had croaked. And you took away some learning from that. You were a pupil or a student in that moment. And you had you not thought about that aspect of pruning before, and it would have that impact or consequence?
No, it's magic because the producer is now a good friend of us. He sleep at home. He's coming. He's very well knows the family, and we are very close. It's like my brother. So I speak with no filter. It was the reality. He asked me, and I discovered this new possibility. Because it's the same idea when I spend a moment with you when you come visiting me. I can say, no, there is no visit. I don't need people at home. You disturb me. But it's exactly the opposite. When somebody come to visit me, like Ellie with the film, there is question who help me to progress. So in the film, it's directly what's happened with Ellie these days. There is no repetition. There is no scenario. It's like that. And the day after, we make a visit of all the other vineyards with Eloise and Benoit. And we'll see in some vineyards the same result of the pruning.
The heat?
Yes. And in some others, we don't see the same link. So we learn something, but we have to continue. It's a direction, yes, sure. That's so fantastic in my job. Each day you can learn something.
If you keep your mind open.
If you don't care.
But we have to be willing to learn and to question, which is what I appreciate about you, because for me, the way I think about you is you're constantly thinking and constantly remaining a pupil or a student of nature and of the weather and of the ground and everything that goes into, what's in here. So I appreciated that about the film. Brad, I want to toss it to you. Do you have anything you want to add to the discussion before we maybe move to Q&A?
Yeah, well, I think one thing I think that would be good to hear from Bertrand is, if there is one thing you want people to understand or take away from the film that followed you for 2018 and 2019, what do you hope that people take away and learn from the film that followed you?
What's important, and when I discover the film, there is no advertisement around Vouette Sorbee, and that's what you have to put in your memory. Certainly that I'm in the first people, in the pioneer who go in this way, but it's not Vouette Sorbee itself. There is many young wine growers around us, like Rupert Leroy, Valérie Prison, Charles Dufour, etc. What you have to conserve is that certainly I'm one stone in the story, in the wall, but even if we are only 10 or 20 people in this direction, I'm not alone. And I'm very happy that we began the film in the fields of Rupert Leroy with the cows and make the preparation together about 500 preparation. So it's very nice in the film. We speak only about Vouette Sorbee because it's much easy to understand all the years from the pruning to harvest. But it could be somebody else in my neighbors of who are in the good way. You see Fleury, you see Valfrison, you see Rupert Leroy, and we speak with other guys. So it's what I hope you put in your head.
Very humble.
But you are something else. You are in the art of Champagne. The place who is not well known. You are in the south, in the Burgundy border, but it's the place to be now in Champagne. So take care about this place. It's where you have the revolution of Champagne. It's the place to be in Champagne. Even if we are very far away of the business of Reims and Épernay, it's a place where people have idea and people make experience. Because we are far away of the business, of the marketing, of the big houses, and we can work together. Nobody is a concurrent. Every people help together. So it's a very good atmosphere in this part of Champagne. There is no competition.
No, that's an excellent point, and I think your wines show that, because to me, your Blancs have a Chablis-like tone and minerality to them, and my favorite is the Saignée des Sorbets, which is Burgundy with bubbles. It's just beautiful, and such a wonderful sense of place that comes from what you do. It just happens to have some bubbles, but to me it's Burgundy, and you don't get that in other regions.
So I try to explain how I'm a very small guy, because there is a story before that about Saignée de Sorbet. It was my grandfather who have a farm, and we don't make any champagne, we drink all our wine. And in the vintage 33, we have too much wine to drink all ourselves. And he sell wine to Champagne company in Reims. But we are in the poor area of Champagne. And my grandfather was only a farmer with cow and fields, cereals, etc. And he was never paid. So my grandfather tell to my father and my uncle to never buy any grape in Champagne area, because the Champagne company, the Champagne business are not good guys. And my grandfather have a good friends during the First World War, who was living in Volnay. So all the grapes of the family are coming from Volnay. And there is a big grape selection in the year 56. So when you tell that Saignée de Sorbet is looking like a Pinot Noir of a Côte de Beaune, yes, okay. That's a genetic origin. But there is people before me who make this decision. It's like that.
We'll call it Saignée de Volnay from now on. That's a great story.
That's very interesting, and again, it just shows that you took advantage of having some good land and stopped sending it to the cooperative, and you let it shine. You gave it life, which again goes back to me. The movie is all about life, and you can enjoy it even if you don't care about wine or champagne, because it's a family story, and hopefully you learn a little as well. And I don't know, Frank, I think there's a million questions that have been popping up on the chat. Everyone wants to talk to Bertrand now that he's a movie star. So I don't know if we want to have some questions, because we might have 5 hours of questions and he doesn't have 5 hours.
Well, we have our friend from New York on, so if we need to do maybe some translation, we can do that too. But I haven't been looking at the chat because I've been trying to focus on the discussion. So do we want to pull some of the questions from there, Brad?
Yeah.
And see what you got?
Yeah, Brad, if you want to pull some that I know you've been reading them as they are going through, but for those who haven't or want to speak themselves, use the raise your hand function, which it depends on what device you're using. Could be by the participants, it could be by more. Sometimes there's 3 dots if you're on a mobile device. There's just the function of raise hand, and then I can call on you. Right now we have Morton, who is first, and I'll ask to unmute you, Morton, and then you can ask directly.
Hi, Bertrand. I wanted to ask you, I read about a project I haven't heard before from you. It's, I believe, a solera project called Infine, and I was wondering if you could tell us about this.
Morton. It's not a project. It's experience. Because in the vineyards of Biodynamic, we began plant Pinot Noir. And when I meet Claude Cossurat and Claude Bourguignon, we make analysis about the clays and the stone in the soils. And we see that it's exactly Chablis soils. So I continue to plant in Chardonnay. So on the same plot, you have the 2 cépages, Pinot Noir and Chardonnay. And all the engineer, technician tell that it's Pinot Noir area. But on my opinion, it's Chardonnay area. So I've got to be sure that my opinion was good. So since the vintage 2005, I make 2 big barrels. So it's food of 40 hectoliters. One of Pinot Noir, the others of Chardonnay on the same vineyards. So all was in biodynamic from the beginning because it's a new vineyard and there is no chemical before. And the wine never have any select yeast or sulfur dioxide for the growing up of the wine. So it's an experience to see if I make the good choice for the future. In my idea is to help my brother, my son, mon fils, the son,
yeah,
to make the good choice when it was his time to coming back and plant the vineyards in the same type of soil. So it's an experience to know and to be sure of the result. We bottling in 2009 or 10, I don't remember, 9. And we waiting 10 years in bottles. And now I've got 340 bottles of each.
I get one.
And I sell the 2 in the same wood boxes for people who want to make their own opinion about the good marriage between Pinot Noir and Kimmeridgien soils and Chardonnay and Kimmeridgien soils. I don't drink all the bottles, so I've got some bottles on the market. That's difficult to sell because there is a few number and people focus on the few number of bottles, but it's not necessarily a high quality wine. It's not necessarily incredible wine. it's an experience for learning, and for learning you need make a small number of bottles, and you don't drink all the bottles, so there is some bottles who go in the nature. So it's the idea of infinite. So it's infinite because I think infinite you can choose the good cepage.
Thank you.
Good question, Morton. That was good.
But Heloise loves this type of wine. So in the future, we certainly make bottles. So wait 10 years. You have to wait 10 years now for the new infinite.
Morton's very young. He can wait.
Okay, next thanks Morton, I'm gonna mute you now. And then next there's quite a few questions that have been asked where people are not raising their hands. So I'm gonna get the people raising their hands first. And then I'm gonna read through the chat and we'll try to address the questions. Or Brad, if you could, because you do a much better job of speaking slowly than I do. I kind of rushed through it a bit. So next we're going to go with Scott Leedy. You're unmuted.
Am I unmuted? Great. Thanks. Thanks for joining us, Bertrand. I listened to an interview, I don't know if you remember, you did with the All Drink to That podcast. It was one of the most profound and thoughtful interviews I've ever listened to with a winemaker, and his thoughts about his relationship to wine and relationship to the vineyard, which is obviously not surprising given the movie, but I recommend other folks go and listen to that if you have the chance. My question is about something you said during that interview. You talked about the fidèle and what that word means, kind of a relationship or a loyalty. And I believe you said something along the lines of, I give something to the wine and the wine gives me something back, which I thought was very profound and very meaningful. I was wondering or hoping you could more about that relationship and what that relationship with the wine and the vineyard means to you. And partially as a second part of that question, because you're passionate about these wines and about your vineyards, what do you hope people take away from your wines when they drink them?
I'm not sure that I understand all the question, but I try to answer. So if you have to complete, stop me. Okay. I think about fidèle. It's important to success in this wine because it's a wine with a perfect face of Vouette Sorbee. So, for example, in the vintage 17, 18, 19, we don't make any Saignée Sorbet to conserve all the grapes of Sorbet because the quality was not very, very nice to make fidèle. So fidèle, it's the most important wine of my houses. You have to know that. After the second part of your question, sorry, can you help me?
Scott, can you rephrase the second part of your question? Just boil it down.
Yeah, I think the second part, and again, I was just, kind of asked about the relationship that you have with your wines and with the vineyards and what that means to you. But the second part was, what do you hope others take away? What do you want them to feel or think about when they drink your wines? That's a better way to phrase it, boy. And sorry, I wish I spoke French. I don't.
So it could be special answer because I have to be honest. I don't make wine for you. So never mind what you take with you. I'm only want to progress, to learn. I know that there is 300 million bottles of champagne who are selling in the world every year. So I never mind about the result at the end. I want only to make the less job in the cellar to have my vineyards in the best quality. So my idea is to discover if the soils of the village, the plot of the village, are interesting to make wine. So never mind about the result in the bottles. What I want is that I want to have the real, la vérité, truth.
What's the
La
word?
vérité? What?
Yeah, identity, the real truth, the identity of the bottle is the vineyard.
Yeah.
Right, the terroir of that vineyard.
So there is no bottle of the family before me. So I have no challenge to make wine special wine. I only make wine to know the natural wine of my village, of my plot. So there is no idea about the wine before. I only have to accept that it's like a children. Some children speaking before learn to walking. Yes.
Mhm.
And some children make the opposite. They are walking before speaking. So you have to be happy with the life who is growing up. So there is no idea to make a special type of wine. There is only the idea to help the wine with growing in his own easy way. If my wine, the easy way is about the tannic direction, about the acidity direction, about the minerality direction, I only have to help the facility of the wine. It's like a children, the wine. If your children is good quality to make music, you have to help him to go in this way. Don't want to be the boss in tennis, for example. That's my idea of the wine. On the result, you accept the result. You understand my idea? It's clear? Yes, not?
No, I think very, very clear. That's I think a very good, honest, and profound answer. Ah.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, that was great.
it's a good question, Scott. That was good exploration there.
Okay, we've got Blake, you're up next. I've written down the rest of the questions, but I've got two people's questions to announce, and now we're going to go with Blake Brown. You're up next.
Bertrand, I want to thank you so much for sharing this wonderful time with us, and especially for your commitment to biodynamic farming, which I'm a big, big fan of and have been for a long, long time. What I thought was pretty interesting and actually extremely surprising was your comment that there are only 20 such people in Champagne that are farming biodynamically and around 200 in the country of France. And if that's accurate, I'm shocked that it's only to that extent. And so my question for you is, why is it at that low level? And what do you see in the future for biodynamic farming principles, and especially in the world of wine?
It's a good question, and I think you have too much money in Champagne, so people don't want to make much more. And the winemaker that you see are flying marketing man, and there is no many responsible who are working in the vineyards. And the real boss is the bank and making money. So it's not on the same direction. What's impossible for classic champagne growers is to accept that the nature is stronger than you. I'm not the boss of the nature, so a vintage like 12, I can fall down of 50% of my harvest. 13, in 13 I fall down of 14%. So it's not possible to accept in big houses with cash flow very strict and the businessman who are the boss of the company. So that's the most important problem. So you can find biodynamic in small family where people know that they don't need much more money, and they accept to fall down. It was a complicated decision for me, because at the beginning, to accept that the nature will be stronger than me, I prepared the price of my bottle to accept to fall down for harvest and don't cut any grapes. That's why directly when I began, my price was in the middle of the good price. Now I progress slowly, but it's not a challenge. That's why that's a difficult opposition in Champagne between biodynamic and money. You understand?
Mhm.
For the future, there is a big proportion of young wine growers who are 40 years old now, who speak a lot of in the social community about blah 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 blah. They came at home because I make a biodynamic school between the years 2000 to 2010. But so many times there is family who don't want any biodynamic certification at home. It's complicated because the vineyards, the owner are 70, 80 years old, and they know only the chemical way. And in the new generation, you have young guys who make the decision of go away of the family and conserve only 1, 2, or 3 hectares and go in the biodynamic direction.
Mhm.
And they accept to have a life level smaller than their parents.
Yeah, like Benoit Dehu.
Charles Dufour,
Mhm.
Benoit Dehu, yes. Pascal Doquet is a big family, but before him it was bigger. Pierre Lamandier was selling vineyards to get smaller and to go make the biodynamic certification.
Uh-huh.
It was bigger before,
Right.
even if it's a big houses. You have Charles Dufour who separate with the family. You have Marie Courtin who make at the beginning her own, and Roland Piolo continue in his way, and after they go the two in the same direction.
Right.
So it's a difficult decision. You have to pay a rent of the vineyards. I pay rent to my daughter, to my sister and my brother. So each year, it's a lot. It's a lovely car, a lovely sportive car, red with horses. So
Ferrari.
it's important to know that there is this big problem in Champagne. I think it's easier in an area where the plots are cheaper, where the bottles are cheaper, etc. After, the weather is complicated, but we can success. If you accept that the nature, you have to live with the nature, not with the technical guys.
Nature is the boss.
Our friends, our girlfriends.
Good question, Blake.
Thank you for an honest answer.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, Blake, I'm meeting you back up there. And next we have Marshall Manning. You're unmuted, Marshall.
Hi, Bertrand. Thank you for sharing your film with us. We really enjoyed that, and I'm trying to grasp something. I've found your wines to be some of the most distinctive wines in Champagne. There's not much else that smells or tastes like them, and I'm wondering how much or what percentage of that is the biodynamic viticulture, what percentage is the terroir, and what percentage is your winemaking?
Good question.
Joker? No, I don't know. I think 100% is biodynamic, but not about the technique of biodynamic. 100% is about psychologic of Goethe, because Steiner only translate the books of Goethe. So it means that the wine growers know himself, his spirit, and is connect because of all the explanation about the plant and the life. After all around is something else. I can make biodynamic bread. I can make biodynamic school. The type of produce depend of your thinking. It's not depend of your energy. It's not depend of your produce. It's not depend where you are living. You have fantastic people everywhere. Some are playing music, some are making bread, and etc. So I give you a bad answer, but it's what I'm thinking.
Well, thank you. Cheers.
Okay, Jim, now that you figured out how to use the raise hand, you are good to go. As soon as you, oops, you unmuted, you got to unmute yourself there, Jim. Jim Stewart.
Okay.
There you go. Got it.
Okay, Jim.
Salut. It was a real pleasure listening to you today. I feel like I've gotten to know you over the past 24 hours. I've watched your film. I've listened to an interview on your podcast, and now you're sharing yourself with us here. And that's what I appreciate most, not the winemaking, although that is interesting, but how you are sharing your point of view, and it applies not only in winemaking, but in life in general. And I have a lot of sympathy with what you're saying. That's a comment, and I do have a question. In the film, your daughter, to me, was very interesting. Almost symbolic of what happens next, and symbolic of people who are a bit skeptical, but hopefully to try something. And I wonder how she is doing. You mentioned earlier that she's trying some of the methods, and how do you feel she's progressing?
We are lucky that we are parents, and our children are the best children in the world. You know that if you have children. So the way of Heloise, it's much more in the wine direction. She loved making wine, but she loved being outside and in the vineyard. So I don't know the future of Heloise, because she is very impressed about the name of Vouette Sorbee. So she thinks that it will be complicated, that it will be a big challenge. So now she tried to find her own way, but she have less freedom than me, because before me it was a cooperative, and for her it's a big challenge. I hope she will stay herself with her big smiles and the family spirit, but she's a little not afraid. Afraid it's too big word, but something less. I think she's a little worried about the future, about le poids de Vouette Sorbee. The name is, but to give you a part of the answer, she make 2 still wine barrels, one white and one red. She make 2 experiences in amphora in the same ideas that I make with Infine. And she loves pruning and being outside. So except the tractor, the machine, she's perfect. But she learned.
Thank you.
Okay. Excuse me. So we have a couple questions that were submitted in the chat. Brad's going to do a couple, and I will do a couple. One is from Carlos, and he asks, what do you think about the malolactic fermentation? Do you think it may cover up the terroir?
Malolactic is very simple because malolactic is a natural transformation to stabilize the wine. So I've got one experience around that, because in the vintage 2008, we see a fantastic bottle of Extrait 2008. It's a very special vintage because we go on harvest with sugar maturity okay, but the pH was very, very down. It's 2.78. So it was very acid. And naturally, the malolactic was impossible to do. But we are afraid having a malolactic in bottles. So I was waiting the malolactic natural. So we'll put barrels in a hot room with us in the dining room during the harvest 2009. So we began harvest, and during harvest we bottling to have 3 barrels. And because the malolactic just finished during the harvest 90. In the same moment, in my cellar, I've got a new wine growers who was Val Frison, the Marne Frison. I gave him a place in my own cellar to make his first champagne. And Val Frison has learning how making wine at school. And he make pied de cuve, malolactic preparation to help the malolactic. He put hot temperature in the wine, and the malolactic never arrived. And he make a second ensemencement. I don't have the word.
Osmosis, is that what he's talking about? Osmosis, maybe?
Oh, I did the yeast.
Oh, the yeast.
So it was complicated to obtain if the nature is not prepared. So now that the weather is moving, the malolactic always happen itself. many time at the end of the alcoholic fermentation. And if it's not enough, it's finished in April, May. My solution is to wash the barrels with only water, hot water, and after cold water, and no sulfur dioxide in the barrels. And in the wood of the barrels, you conserve Malolactic bacteria. And the Malolactic go its way when the wine is at a good level.
Okay, thank you. One more, and then I'll turn the other ones over to Brad. And I know that Bertrand, I'm sure that he's going to like this question. Is the biodynamic process an evolving practice? Do you feel that there'll be new preparations, or is it complete right now? Is it finished in terms of the process, or does it keep changing?
Is there a 509?
Only read the first chapitre of the book of Steiner, Conférence à l'agriculture, was the first sentence of the first part of the book, explains that it's only a direction. We are at the beginning of a new science, so it will progress a lot. Now we know the result of biodynamic, because there is result in the wine, in the apples, etc. But we don't know exactly how it's the reason. It's like the beginning of the science of magnetism. For example, we know that all the iron go to the north of the earth, but nobody knows the mathematical explanation. But we know the result. It's like you know Newton with the apples who go on his head. He understands that there is something who's happening, and during century and century we are using the gravity forces, but nobody make mathematical explanation about the gravity forces. We have to wait a long time. Einstein, who makes the E égale MC, MC2. So we are at the beginning of one science. We know that there is something happening with the biodynamic preparation. We don't have all the explanation in the back side of why is this happening. We have some idea. So I think that when all the scientific people accept the biodynamic result, the science of biodynamic will progress very quickly, and we can explain much more why this, and we open new way of preparation, of dynamization, and etc. We are at the beginning of a new science. Thinking to Newton, who have his apple on the head.
Very good.
Okay, I had to unmute myself. Okay, just in time here, before you take over, Brad, we got Julie, who just raised her hand, and I will ask to unmute you. There we go.
You.
Go ahead, Julie.
Thanks, Todd. Thank you so much, Bertrand, for spending this time with us and sending the wonderful video. So my question, it was very interesting how you talked about the experimentation. Sorry, am I not? Todd's giving a face. Okay, hopefully, can you hear me okay? Okay, cool.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I was just gonna ask, I really liked what you said about your grandfather and how he made wine for himself, right? And at some point, he had so much wine that he started selling. So my question is for you, is there any wine that you're making that you're not selling because you're trying to, you know, just enjoy it for the family? And then similarly, your daughter is making the new still wine. Is that available for sale? because I think it's really neat for you to share just the stories about the special projects that you guys are working on, because you're, you know, interested in making good wine and experimenting. I know it was probably too fast, but is the still wine available for sale? And are there other projects that you're working on that you'd like to share with us that's more just interesting to share?
Well, I hope that Eloise don't make wine for selling. You make wine to understand the direction of your job, and still wine is one step to prepare the future. It's like when I decide to make Infinite, it to give me the result of my experience. So she make a special pruning in the vineyards of Vouette and in the vineyard of Sorbee in a small part of the plot to make still wine. So we will know in the future. For selling this bottle, it's a big problem because to have a good experience, we have to make 1 barrel, 2 barrels, 3 barrels, and it's 300 bottles, 600 bottles. So, and now the fashion direction is to make a small number of bottles, put a lovely labels, and make an expensive price. So it's very crazy. That's why we don't make any lieu-dit. Lieu-dit is not for me. I'm afraid about that because the quality of the first bottle, the label of the families go down because they conserve the best to put in lieu-dit, and the price are incredible. So in still wine, I think we speak a lot with Eloise, and we prepared the future of the weather. Only to be honest, sorry, nobody listen me. I'm speaking, but forget what I say. To be honest, in the future, we have to stop making bubbles. But it's so easy to earn money with champagne names that we will try to continue. But to be honest, the weather, the soils, and the quantity of water with raining, etc., make us to go in the direction of Burgundy still wine.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I selected in 2000 the graft in Chablis. For the Chardonnay, I don't have any graft from Champagne. It's from Chablis. And the last that we plant in Vouette, Chardonnay are coming from the border of Spain to be prepared for the new weather.
Bertrand, it reminds me when I visited Pierre Gerbet in 2018, we talked a lot about the weather and vines, and he has an experimental part of his slope that he's growing and thinking in terms of making still wine in the future without bubbles. So it may be, you say it's honest, but it may be that's where we're all going to be. If Heloise continues, she may be making still wine for Vouette Sorbet, and maybe no more bubbles. We don't know.
The problem is like with Rosé d'Hérisset. I don't know if somebody doing this type of wines, Rosé d'Hérisset, it's a still pink wine in south of Champagne area. When you make 1 bottle of still wine, it's at the place of 1 champagne bottles. So each time that you have to sell 1 still wine bottles, you have to sell it with the same price and bubble wine. And I'm not sure that the quality in our area of still wine can be selling to this price level. So there is a big challenge, I think, to try the good price for the quality for still wine.
Okay, Brad, do you want to take over the rest of the questions?
You know, I think we probably only have time for one more because I know
Oh yeah.
Bertrand.
Oh yeah, we have to stop.
To a party.
They take care about me.
So I'm going to go back to the chat, and Blake had a question that I thought was interesting. It came from the movie, and he asked, when you were speaking about the forces on the vines, you said Chardonnay goes up, and you have Pinot Blanc, which is much more terrestrial, going out. But he said, what about Pinot Noir?
Question, Blake.
Pinot Noir is coming from Chardonnay genetically, but I think Pinot Noir is in the right balance, and I have a bad opinion at the beginning and after the experience of Infine, when we test the two bottles. In my idea, I think there will be a very big difference between Chardonnay and Pinot Noir. But Pinot Noir, after 10 years, conserve a part of a minority who is, I'm very surprised. So we have in our cellar all the cuvée and all the vintage since my beginning, and we confirm that Pinot Noir go in the way of Chardonnay.
Okay.
With edges. Because
okay.
we're selling bottles very young, 3 years, 4 years. But if you conserve a long time, it was Monday, we opened with Japanese people who are traveling. Japanese people. We opened 2002, 100% Pinot Noir. We stay very direct and lightly, étincelant, brillant.
Yeah, the brilliance.
Yeah, illuminate. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. So the Pinot, it makes sense, as you said, because Pinot and Chardonnay are related, that they both would go up. And I also find it very interesting how you speak of champagne is unfortunately, it's a luxury good. Louis Vuitton, Moet, Hennessy, it's, as you said, very much about money. And I remember talking to some of the chef de cave, or again, as you say, they really are more a marketing person now. They all wish they could get back to being in the vines, and they all wish they did not have to buy or purchase bad fruit, but the finance people make them. How does champagne ever change? Because if you are Moet, you have to make 25 million bottles, and you have to use bad grapes from bad growers and smile when you sell it. How do we stop that?
There is a revolution in champagne now. It's 20 centimes. You know the dollar and cents.
Yes.
It's 20 cents revolution, because Moet give 20 cents much more on the grapes if you don't use herbicides. It's a big revolution.
That's good.
Well, and it's necessary, because I know, talking to Benoit Goez in 2017, he said he was embarrassed to have to make some of these wines because of the grapes he had to take in. So I hope more and more people find a natural way, because there is still more bad than good in champagne, which that needs to change. And I hope that more people can follow what you do and have true passion for their terroir.
I think of Lanson.
Asking Bernard Arnault, asking the boss. You have to ask the boss.
Yeah, and hopefully good things can come from that.
But Brad, but even some of the bigger labels, I mentioned Lanson with the green label, and we see all the stuff on Instagram from Jean-Baptiste posting every day about the farming and the compost. And so it's happening, and there is a revolution if we can see that there's light where there might be darkness, if you believe strongly in producing things cleanly without chemical. And if you put the dogma aside, if you believe that to be something about biodynamics, I think Bertrand is right. People are trying, and as consumers, if we demand something cleaner, if the bank is running things, the bank is going to make cleaner wine.
Yeah, well, and again, we have to see, I know and we've talked of this before, there's the no herbicide in 2025 goal in Champagne. It's a good step if that can be achieved. We will see. I hope so.
Mm-hmm. Me too. I hope so too.
So any other questions we have for Bertrand? I'm trying to go through the list. I think a lot have been covered. Todd, do you see any more?
I think Geoffroy go very quickly. No, the big house of Roderer make a lot of jobs. She is a pioneer in this category, and we make a lot of speaking with the boss of the vineyards, and the team of the vineyards came at home 2 times for speaking on visiting the vineyards. So I think it's one of the most interesting big houses.
Yes, but Roderer to me is more a large grower than a big house, because they own 80% of their land, which is a help. And there's still 4 million bottles is a lot. It's not 30. To me, a big challenge of natural or biodynamic farming is size. Many times you need to get smaller, as you said, to get better, because it's work all the time in the vines every day.
Not so much.
Why?
You have to be present. You have to make your decision quickly with the weather. You have to be here. You have to live in your farm. But I'm not working day or night.
Yes, good case. But you have to be close enough to react.
Yes.
Yeah.
But it's a pleasure. It gives sense to your life.
Yeah. So.
And I think Mr. Lecaillon well understands that he need to give sense to the team to make a good company result.
Yeah. No. Absolutely.
So are we done with questions, guys? Is that the end of the questions?
I think there's one more.
I sent one more to Brad.
Yeah. So we have a question here, and Bertrand, someone asks, how do you feel in the Côte de Bar? There's no Premier Cru, there's no Grand Cru in the old Échelle de Cru ranking. Do you feel that affects producers? And then do you feel that an organization of Côte de Bar producers getting together helps to promote the region, similar to Bull Bio or a Club de Tresor or something like that, that helps more people discover the Côte de Bar?
I think the people who are interested in Champagne, every people know Côte de Bar, the real people. And there are, you are too many guys in the world who very well know Côte de Bar. And you go quicker than us because each year we have 1, 2, 3 new producers who go in the good way. But you make much more links than we can progress. And I'm not crazy to make noise around Côte de Bar, because if you go quicker than us, it's bad publicity, advertisement, if you want. So I'm not crazy to make a lot of noise around Côte de Bar. Now you have, for example, Raphaël Piconnet from Domaine de Bicherie.
Very good.
Would just arrive. He is a baby and directly is a star guys. You have many things to do, I think. In the opposite, you have Olivier and Marie Oriot from Rissé, who make time, who go step by step, who are successful people and don't make much more noise. And I think they are the top of Côte de Bar today with Robert Leroy. So take care about advertisement.
No, good
It's
point.
best that people don't know us and we make good jobs. That's the opposite. That every people know you, but you don't make good wine.
Right.
Any people know the story about Échelle des Crus? Champagne, Échelle des Crus? We are not afraid to be outside because the real link, the real explanation about Échelle des Crus is the quality of the grapes who arrived to the négoce company, to the big houses company. If the quality is very good, you are at the top of Échelle des Crus. But the quality at the middle of the 19th century is in link with the 2 hours of horses to transport the grapes. So at 2 hours around the big houses, you are in Grand Cru. Much more than 2 hours horses to transport the grapes, you are in Premier Cru. Look at the map, look at where the cellar of Crayère, you put around the Crayère cellars, you make 2 hours of horses to transport the grapes, Grand Cru. Never mind about the soils, never mind about the quality of the growers. It's only the reality at the moment, and nothing moves after. So we don't care to be outside of the Premier Cru, Grand Cru. It's only for the people who don't know anything about Champagne. It's blah, 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 blah.
It is marketing, and it's like putting the orange wetsuit or the orange covering on the Vouette bottles. It's not Vouette, but Vouv bottles to get things to be sold. I see Brad's point. Grand Cru gets people's attention, but for people that are smart, that don't want the advertising and the publicity, it's what's in the bottle that matters to us, not the word Grand or Premier Cru in their bottle.
Because did you see that in Grand Cru and Premier Cru in Champagne, it's the only place in the world of wine where all the village is in Grand Cru. You are at the bottom of the hill, in the middle, at the top. You are close to the potatoes field or close to the forest. All
Right.
is in Grand Cru.
Which
It's
doesn't make
incredible. That's why you have to see what's make clandestine champagne, because it's a real revolution about échelle des trucs.
Mhm.
It's the first houses of champagne who make this type of assemblage.
So is that the end of the questions there, Brad and Todd?
Yeah, I think that's everything I've seen. I think Bertrand made a couple of great points with Jean-Baptiste Lecaillon, who I think is a brilliant winemaker and vine grower, doing things right. Olivier Oriol, the Oriol family in the Rosé des Rices region is fabulous. I think that's another producer to search out that Bertrand mentioned. They make bubbles still. Very, very good. And as you said, thoughtful. And again, I think we're seeing more and more good work finally being found. I shouldn't say found, but coming to the forefront in the Côte de Bar. The young producers are trying new things. Hopefully they will learn and go on the right path, but there's excellent wines coming from all over now. So yeah, thank you, Bertrand, for taking the time and sharing your soul with us. It's very, very special to talk to you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks to Brad and Frank for putting this together. And thanks to Bertrand for joining us during his wife's birthday party. So now that he has been drinking champagne, he has to go back and actually join the rest of the people and celebrate his wife. So
yes.
Thank you for being with us, Bertrand, and everyone for joining.
It's a good time.
Everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you,
thank you for all your questions. You helped me to thinking.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
All right. Have a good day.
Everybody.
Bonsoir.
Bye.